Good. It's great to see so many familiar faces, new faces as well, and it's been an interesting few weeks, let's say that. But we are here, the right people in the room. We're going to have some great conversations, and I'm really, really excited for that. Hami Ivirin. So
I'll maybe do the housekeeping before we go live stream.
that's a great idea.
Those folks probably don't need some housekeeping from me. Do your dishes. Lewis has a fiddle. I have a clipboard, which I've learned. If you're...
Which sums us up, I think.
Well, I think so, right? Also, I've learned that if you walk around a pub with a clipboard, you will be asked for drinks and where to seat. So I'm going to remember that one next time. So welcome to WASPs. So I'm so glad you were able to find it okay. Apologies about the parking situation. But yeah, really glad you were all able to make it from some very far places as well. So appreciate all the effort you've all put into being here. It's really exciting. So just a few housekeeping things. So toilets are, if you go out this door at the back and turn left, and then left again, there's kind of a jewelry stand that you might get distracted by, and then there's the toilets there. I've just discovered that the accessible toilets in that part of the building are not working, which is a real shame, but you just follow the pink line is the main idea today. And so there's more accessible toilets if you follow the pink line through to the cafe. So apologies that the accessible toilets are a bit further away this time. We do have a quiet room, which is just across the corridor. This is unfortunately the same room that we're going to be using for the second the set of community spotlight talks. So in that hour, it won't be a very quiet room. But after lunch, that will just be for if you need to take a little bit of space to yourself, please do that at any point if that's useful. During the talks, there is also a quiet space if you just go up the stairs, which is just outside this door. That's obviously not accessible, so apologies again. But the cafe won't be too busy, so there's also a space to go and sit there if that's needed. And do just look after yourselves. We'll do some more space setting in a moment. There isn't a fire alarm scheduled, so you know the drill. If there's a fire alarm, it does mean we need to get out. The nearest fire exit is the one that many of you will have come through, which is just behind, at the back of this room. There's a curtain, and we'll make sure that we make the access clear. I mean, the access is clear, but we'll open the doors for you there. There's also another accessible fire exit if you go out the door and then go straight down. And if that was the case, we'll make sure that there's someone there to make that clear for folks as well. There's tea and coffee at the back. Hopefully you've already helped yourself to it. There should be enough of everything, hopefully. There's decaf and fully leaded for those of us who got up early this morning. If you are someone with kind of higher taste for coffee and anything else, the cafe is also serving until 5 o'clock, so feel free to go and take something there as well. We'll have lunch served here. We've taken a note of all your dietary needs, so hopefully that's all covered. We're really excited about the lunch. It's from a South Indian restaurant, a local family-run restaurant. Some of you are celebrating because you've had this before, and I'm a little bit annoyed because at this conference, the last one we did, we put so much effort into planning it, making sure everything was great. All people talked about was the food. Nothing else that we did. So, you know, if that happens today, that's grand. There's precedent. So that will be coming, but there are some biscuits at the back as well. Wi-Fi, if you need it, it's the visitors' Wi-Fi, so you should be able to sign on. And then I think it was written on the registration desk, but it's ARTS with a capital A, it's plural ARTS, 2022. You should be able to connect. We do have a hashtag somewhere,
CKM.
which is just CKM Gathering. If you're the kind of person who's able to listen and text at the same time, I don't know how those people do it. Some people manage. So you're welcome to join along. Some of us will be sort of live texting as we go. And yes, the exits and entrances are as you came in as well. I think that's everything, but I still have my clipboard, so I will be back with more later. Thank you.
Amazing. So I believe we are actually beginning to live stream. That's correct. If we can get my slides up, that would be amazing. Thank you very much. Can we also just say a massive thank you already to Paul and Stuart, who are doing so much work making this accessible. It is no mean feat. Thank you very much. So welcome, Falcha Hulidunya, for those of you joining from online. We are live streaming in the morning, and I think, hey, okay, excellent, well done. We're here. Thank you. Welcome for those joining. If you are joining online, we do welcome comments, and if you know where my clicker is, that's also helpful, clearly. Just to go through the schedule, just to set where we are, we're already, of course, running a little bit late, but that's okay. We'll adapt. So we're going to do a welcome. The first part of the morning is going to be listening in a little bit of the update of what is Community Knowledge Matters, where are we, how did we get to where we are. And then we've also got some working groups who are kind of pushing some interesting discussions and themes, which we really hope today you'll get a chance to also spend some time thinking about, particularly in the afternoon. So there'll be a little bit more to the front at the beginning, just to kind of show an update. And then, most importantly, actually, we'll have a break about 11:45, and then we're going to hear from communities. So obviously, we're here today to advocate for community-led research, and so the first thing that was most important to us is having communities across the Highlands and Islands and further to be able to share what does that actually mean in practice. So from 12 o'clock, we have 2 parallel sessions. Each parallel session is about 45 minutes, and you'll have a choice of 2. So this is when we're going to break out into this room or into the room over there. But the first one, which is going to be in this space, is going to be looking at well-being on the Isles, from Gear to the North Isles of Orkney. And then we also have, in the other session, we have a session on climate change and the intersections between climate change and mental well-being. This one is live streamed, that one is not live streamed. And then in the second parallel session in this room, we're going to have a session on the role of arts and cultural well-being with Carers and Murray and Deep Ness across the Western Isles. And in that room over there, there is a session around youth-led research as well. So don't worry, you're not going to have to remember all that, but just so you've got a bit of a feeling, so you're going to pick a room. They're all being recorded, I should say that. So there will be a video at the very end as well. So if you miss one session, you'll get to catch up on the other one after the fact as well. We have lunch at 1:35, very important. And then, as I said, in the afternoon, we're going to really take some of the questions that we raised from the morning and go into a bit of chance to get to meet each other a bit more properly and dig in. So we're going to do a World Cafe, which I'll explain what that means, but basically in gist, you're going to be going through and talking about lots of different topics. So you get a little flavor of a bit of everything. And then we have a break, of course, very important. And then when we go to 4:15, developing the collective asks and next steps, you're going to get a chance to really dig into one of those topics for about an hour. So you get to pick what that is, and that's really pushing and thinking a bit as a network, as community members, as researchers, as policymakers, as practitioners, what do we want to see around ethics? What do we want to see about community research and partnerships? What do we want to see about funding in the future? And that's going to really help guide what we do for the next year as a network. Got a chance for reflection, the end of the first part of the day. You get a chance to, for those of you, you might want to go back to your hotel, you might want to chill, might get a drink, and then we're going to come back here for 7:30, same room, and then food is going to be served, and then the Ceilidh will start. And again, there's a chance to share at the Ceilidh as well. So hopefully that's what you signed up for. Does that sound exciting? Yeah. Amazing. So one of the most important things is thinking about our values. We've already set a little bit of the space, but these were the values that we developed at the very beginning of the work of Community Knowledge Matters. That was a good 18 months ago?
Almost.
18 months ago. Wow. We've got equity, inclusivity, collaboration, respect, and integrity. And what does that mean for us in practice? For this space, of course, we want you to be respectful. We always iterate this, even online, but be kind, be courteous. If you need to step away at any point, we've got the quiet spaces. Also, you can talk to any of our staff team, anyone. We've got Freya at the back over here. Of course, there's Lauren, myself, and then there's also Becky as well, who is not here at the moment, but you will see her. So if there's any questions like that, please do and let us know. Please let us know how we can help and support. And do talk to each other as well. Do look after each other. So one of our principles is about language. One of the big things about bringing different experiences together is that there's sometimes, very often, a difference in the language used. Sometimes it's jargon. Sometimes we use words, and they mean different things. So online, we have a jargon jar, which is a Padlet, which many of you, I love Padlet. But you'll be relaxed to know that there is no Padlet today, okay? So instead, maybe later, but not now. So if there's any words that you're not quite sure of as a piece of jargon, there are Post-it notes on your table. Please write it down, and we're going to make a little pile of them, and we'll make sure we go over those words again, just to kind of make sure that we're kind of coming from the same place, because language is a barrier, and we know that language can be used to reinforce hierarchy, and that's absolutely not what we're here to do. So it's a way to check ourselves as a collective. Does that sound good? Amazing. Open, of course, any questions. There'll be plenty of time for chat. It's a shared space, so just be aware of that when we're talking. And then we are recording, as I said. So again, most of you, I think, you would have had the opportunity to sign a media release form. We're going to be recording and filming today. There are maybe Mentimeters and Padlets that we're going to be using. So these are going to be shared within the network. So not quite public, but obviously anyone in the network can see them. Okay, we're going to do a bit of check-in.
Just before we do that,
yes, of course, yes.
We'll just say a wee bit more about some of the other accessibility needs. Obviously, as Lewis mentioned, do let us know if there's anything that we can do to help at all. As you will all know, many disabilities are invisible, and people might have access needs that don't seem clear to folks. We have spoken already to our friend Diana, who's happy to let us know that it's going to be more comfortable for her sitting on the sofa over here. When she's in the wheelchair, it obviously can be a bit hard to hear when it's close to the table. So if you can be mindful of that with whoever you're speaking to make sure that they can hear you okay. And Diana's also happy for me to say that sometimes it takes a bit more time to process, and so in having conversations, if it seems like she's not interested, it's just her processing, and she's really wanting to have a conversation with folks as well. Is that all right to say that? Anything else?
Yeah, just on the respect thing, it might not occur, but I swap words regularly and phrases, and what comes out might be the opposite of what I'm looking for, so I go like into a ream of words in my head, and some of them might come from, so if I was looking at race, it will have an ex-boyfriend who's wonderful, who's Nigerian in it, but it will also have racist comments from films and things in it. So at worst, I might pick up a phrase that from when I was with him, and it's wonderful and it's culturally appropriate, and I might accidentally drop it and pick something from a film or something else in. So if I say something I'm not sure about or sounds biased, it's unlikely to be me. And if I give you another example, my kindest neighbours, genuinely my kindest neighbours, who go above and beyond, are methadone addicts and alcoholics, and they're amazing. So I know that I was abrupt about something to do with drugs at the meal last night, and I don't think anybody picked it up from me, but I was aware that they could afterwards when I was thinking about it. So just be aware that there is no, I'm unlikely to mean it if it's not coming across right. It's just I can't get my words right frequently.
Thanks for sharing that, and I'm sure you're not the only person who, has their own way of communicating, and that's incredibly important to all of us in the room as well. If there's anyone else here at this point who would like to say something that might help others or help themselves to be more accessible, you're very welcome to, but obviously don't want to put anyone on the spot. Do speak to either myself, Lewis, Becky and Freya and Becky, in that order, are at the back. And so, yeah, please do let us know at any point. Just a couple more introductions. We've also got Phoebe, who is very kindly and very creatively going to do some illustrated notes of today's session. We've used these in previous conferences, and it's been really exciting to see them. So thanks very much to you, Phoebe. And alongside Stuart and Paul, who are doing their magic to get this live streamed, to you all as well. We've also got Alex, who's taking some photos as well. So huge thanks to all of you guys. And again, if you've got an issue with photography or anything, do let us know, but I think you've had a chance to do that. All right, so for those of you who have come to one of our online community of practices, you will probably be familiar with this site over here. So this is what we are calling the community check-in. Now, we're in the Highlands, and we know, not just in the Highlands, but people often wear a lot of hats, especially in community spaces, and you're kind of here as one thing, you've got multiple jobs. And we really wanted, with this network, to make sure that we're breaking down the binaries between especially those who are maybe classed as professional researchers and those who are seen as not researchers, because we very much fundamentally believe we're all researchers, but also we're all parts of communities. And so kind of having that distinction can actually be quite a not very useful binary. So partly we wanted to break down that distinction. And just also we thought it's useful to kind of get a sense of what are the different perspectives, what are the different hats people are coming into the room with. So we do this at every community of practice to kind of welcome people into the room, get a sense of who else is there as well. So we've got a QR code on the screen here. So if you're able to now it all looks like we're at a concert and everyone's getting their flashlights out. If you're able to scan the QR code, you should be able to get into this Mentimeter. If you're not able to, don't worry. You can also write down on a Post-it note. There should be some Post-it notes on your table. So I'll give you folks a moment to do that. So it should pop up, and you can choose one of the options, or you can choose any of the options to what extent you're coming in today as a community member. Or maybe you're coming in primarily as a person with lived experience, and that's really how you're entering the space. Maybe it's your researcher hat that you're coming in most strongly with, or maybe as a practitioner or a service provider, or maybe a decision maker in some capacity. And so it's just to acknowledge that we all have elements of this in our lives, but it's useful to get a sense of what we're coming into the space with. So I'll give you... Okay, thanks very much, guys. So thanks for letting us know some of the different hats you've got there. Obviously, lots of people coming in with lived experience as well. I'm also someone who's coming into the space with lived experience alongside my clipboard. So at the end of this series of the networks, we're planning on kind of amalgamating them all together so we get a real sense of who's in the network and what are we doing. But as we can see, our kind of idea is to work with people who have lived experience to see how that can shape research and policy more. So brilliant to see that there's so many of us in that category with us here, alongside community members, researchers, and as we say, we're all a bit of all of them. So the next one, if you don't mind passing it on, Lewis. So this is asking you, what communities do you belong to? Now, another ambiguous one, and we've left it purposefully ambiguous, so you can interpret that how you like. So that might be a geographical community, it might be a community of experience, might be a community of identity, something that you feel you're bringing with in terms of your communities. Because as I say, we're all part of some kind of community, whatever that is. So if you have a chance, Shetland, right there from the off. Is Shetland going to get knocked off the first spot? This is a big question. Very mesmerizing watching this. As I say, at the end, we plan to kind of amalgamate them all together so we get a real sense of who's in the network, who are we coming in with. It's very hard to read some of the smaller ones. But great, we've got peer research. It's going to be hard to read them all out as they're moving. All right.
It's not a competition. I think. But clearly it's Shetland, Inverness, and Bury.
So yeah, at the end of the day, we're going to have a big tug of war between Shetland and Moray and see who's the strongest contingent. But no, that's brilliant. Thanks for letting us know. And again, we'll be sharing this afterwards because it's always really interesting to see who people are coming in with. And obviously there'll be a chance later to speak to people about the communities you're coming in with and the different hats. Oh, yes, and we do have one other question for you. So if you're able to put onto the Mentimeter what you're hoping to get out of today. It may be another cup of coffee, but something that you're looking forward to today. Maybe it was a reason you were particularly excited about coming here. It might be keen to speak to someone about a certain type of topic. Maybe you're wanting to learn something. So if you've got any kind of strong feelings about what you're excited about today or hoping to get out of today, that'll be really useful. And again, for those online, you're welcome to join in as well. So we're seeing a lot of connection and networking. Hopefully us running late already gave you a chance to do that. You see, we've thought this through. Seeing a lot about increased confidence about community-led research, insights into how better to engage with community knowledge. I'm glad you mentioned that because we do have the community spotlight. So again, a brilliant opportunity to hear directly from people who've been doing their own community-led research. That's great. Oh, this is, the AI is, AI versus Lauren, I think is what this is right now. So we've got making connections, gaining knowledge, sharing ideas, community engagement, inspiration, networking, understanding others' experiences, support. Which I have to say is a pretty good summation of what we're trying to do as a network. So I feel like we're doing something right here. And hopefully you will come away from today feeling you've got some of those things as well. All right, thank you very much for your participation.
Very briefly, we're running a bit behind, but I want to get to the real good stuff. But just to set in context, who are we? How did Community Knowledge Matters happen? So as an organisation, we're a social enterprise, and our vision is a Scotland where everyone's creativity, curiosity, and well-being are fundamentally valued. And I guess it's important to say that we come from a background as practitioners working in communities. We have programs, particularly in schools, but also youth work, community learning and development. And that really very much informed our work when we started thinking about supporting networks. So we have a lot of our work is in the cultural sector as well as in the knowledge sector as well, in the research sector. And this is really how we began thinking about, we had the opportunity with the British Science Association a few years ago during lockdown, where everything changed, all our practice changed collectively. And the British Science Association, who were funded by Wellcome, had the opportunity to think, well, what could we do? Traditionally, research is funded through the institution, through the researcher. And what would it look like if we could subvert that a little bit? What happens if communities could actually hold the funding to lead research? And so initially we involved in the research and development because of our work with communities in Scotland. We actually started off very much, one of our founding members, Helen, is from Orkney, so we were very, very fond of going up to Orkney and doing work up in Orkney as well with different communities originally, despite the Shetland bias now. It's all changed. And so we advocated for Highlands and Islands as the place within the Ideas Fund, and what developed has become as the Ideas Fund, which I think we're going to go into the next slide of. So the question was, what can a grant scheme that centers communities look like? And we know it's not just about the money. So what was interesting, what the Ideas Fund was really interested in with the British Science Association was how can we support communities who are not engaged and involved in research, and in fact, in some cases, are skeptical, have felt marginalized by research processes, who felt extracted from by researchers. How can we develop an approach of funding, of grant making, which will enable communities to lead this process? And so we worked with them to develop a role, and the role became what we call the development coordination. So we're thinking about our role as an organization is not quite, we're the mediator. We understand the communities, we work a lot with stakeholders to try and target communities that are in this priority area across the Highlands and Islands. We also understand research. We've got a background in research as well. We understand the language and the institutional pressures that there can be in that. And we're not quite the funder. We're not holding the money, but we are helping deliver and supporting the funds in a way to provide this support. And what that means in practice is everything from the beginning conversations with communities, helping communities, particularly communities who've never written funding application before, for example, go through this process, supporting them, matching them with researchers, giving them an opportunity to talk to multiple researchers, and then developing a program from there. And so we've got some colleagues in the room from the British Science Association and the Ideas Fund. We have Kirsty over here, we have Vivian, and we also have development coordinators from Hull, which is one of the other areas as well. And through the Ideas Fund, we have about 25 projects across the Highlands and Islands that are funded, where the communities have got a question about their mental well-being, they've been matched or are working with a researcher, and this represents about £1.2 million worth of investment, I think, give or take, geographically. So it's significant. A lot of our work is developing a network around this, and then also thinking about the capacity building more generally. We also had a similar program with the British Science Association around climate change, a much smaller scale program, but a really key one. And again, there are some colleagues here from our climate change network, similar principle, the communities lead the projects with £5,000. What we very much learned about this, one, partnership working is very difficult. Two, this is not how research normally happens. And even when researchers, even when everyone involved in the system wants this to happen, there are barriers in the way. And some of these barriers are what we call structural or infrastructural, things like ethics processes, things like who gets to read the papers afterwards, or does it have to be a paper? Does knowledge have to look like in a certain way? Even thinking about if you're working with, particularly with an institution, a university, procurement, contracting, data, ownership. There's all these structures around which, even with the best will in the world, with the people, individuals involved, are massive barriers. And so we have a separate grant from the Ideas Fund, from the British Science Association, which is to look at the infrastructure. How can we, so we've got no more project-based funding, open project-based funding, but taking the learning that we have at the moment, what can we do to change some of the structures to enable a much more equitable, community-led research in the future? And the hope is that we can continue, and this network is what's come out of it, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the very specific pieces of work that have come from that learning as well today. But just to give you a little bit of a flavor, There's, of course, the network building, we've got the gathering, we've got our online events. I'm not going to talk about this too much. It's been a busy 18 months, is what I'm going to say. We've got a little bit in terms of the policy work that we're trying to do, the capacity building. I'm going to break this down, or in fact, Lauren's going to break this down in the next step.
So as Lewis says, it's been a busy 18 months, and this is a long-standing, if you're waiting for an email from me, this is probably why. So we have, over the last 18 months, our main aim is to gather everyone together. We're a network of you all, and we also have a steering group who have been helping us kind of plan some of these details and making sure that we're incorporating different elements that are going on alongside us. So we're delighted to have lots of our steering group members here. We have community members such as the Moray Wellbeing Hub and Open from the Shetland contingent. And we've also got YouthLink Scotland, Amy's in the room here, Scottish Community Development Centre, sadly they couldn't join us today, Scottish Policy Research Exchange, UHI, we're working with NES, the NHS for Health Education, and I'm probably missing people, the Scottish Public Engagement Network as well. And then, of course, we've got stakeholders who we're engaging with. Stakeholders, I guess, can mean anything, but people who are working in this kind of sector as well. So we're constantly having conversations with them, perhaps policymakers, decision makers, how we can change the structure that Lewis mentioned. And so the real heart of the network is bringing the networks together, because it's your network, it's our network. And so you'll probably know we do this through a series of communities of practice. So we've been holding them monthly. They're online spaces. We've had over 10, I think, now. And they're really a chance to inform the network, hear what we're up to, help shape it, and kind of give feedback on what we're doing, have kind of collective kind of exercises to help us think about language, how we can think about access in different ways. We then also, as Lewis mentioned, we want to hear from you all and those who are leading the way on community-led research. So we've just started a new series, also monthly, called Conversation Stations. For all the puns, you can tune in to community-led research. And we were delighted that Ron Coleman from Deep Ness launched us off with our first conversation station, which you can see online, and you'll be hearing from them later as well. And we also had Morvain as well from Gairloch Head Station Trust, another fantastic presentation about their community-led research. So that's another opportunity to come in and do more of that learning and inspiration that you mentioned. And then we've got an online space called Community Lab, which is a network and a kind of forum to post. You can all post your own opportunities. We post also training and other opportunities as well. And then the other kind of mechanism of our network is we've got a series of working groups. So these are made up of people from across the network and in our steering group. And at the moment we've had 2 working throughout the last 18 months. One specifically looking at ethics, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Another one looking at public health and social care. And then we're also now looking at starting another one on climate, the intersections between climate and well-being, and also thinking about capacity building and training and how we can embed some of that support. And so then out of these, I hope you can see the kind of progression here, out of these working groups, we've had a few outputs already. So we have what we're calling a participatory ethics toolkit, which again we'll say a little bit more about afterwards. And we've also launched this co-priority survey, which we have been collaboratively designing with a number of community members, which again, you'll hear all about soon. And then we're now in the stage of working on developing some training and resources that can better support people to lead on their own community-led research. It's also just worth mentioning we're definitely not the only ones doing this. So we're obviously in a position where we can bring people together and link up with folks. And really our main aim is that kind of networking and sharing that knowledge that we know is already out there. Just to kind of acknowledge other people who are doing similar things. So there's our sister network is what we're calling it, the Moray Community Researcher Network. And we've got Heidi here from that network as well, and many other people from Moray here as well. So if you would like to know more about it, if you're based in Moray and you don't know Heidi already, Heidi with the lovely green top. And we've got the Third Sector Research Forum. We've got Amy over here who can tell you a bit more about that, and we'll hear from Amy soon. There's the Community Land Ownership Academic Network, quite a long one, which is based at UHI. So again, thinking about community researcher protocols. Scottish Community Development Centre, who've been doing this work for a long time. There's a new island researcher network that is just forming. And unfortunately, they weren't able to make it today, but if you are a researcher, whether peer researcher or you're based in a university and you live in one of Scotland's islands, let us know and we can let you know about their network as well. And then there's CODEL, who are based in the Western Isles, the community development, and they're also doing work in this area as well. So that's just an idea. So I'll start by saying a little bit more about the ethics working group, because it's really been at the heart, again, of some of our thinking and kind of how we've been developing the network. So we started this conversation with a number of our steering group members and other members interested in how we can make community researcher partnerships more equitable, and essentially how we can make them more ethical, and what we mean by more ethical. So we were kind of thinking, well, if we wanted to design our own ethics process, we know that if you're in a university, you have to go through a specific ethics process, and that's not always very accessible. So what if we wanted to design our own one completely that wasn't constrained by the barriers that often are presented at university ethics processes? So we started thinking about it, and then thinking about, well, what role is there for community members to access ethics if they're not part of a university, and how can we make that more approachable for people? We then were also thinking about, so Lewis mentioned the community researcher partnerships, which mostly work incredibly well, but there's always snags and things to work out. And so what happens if something goes wrong? We realize there is no kind of ombudsman, if you like, or a body you can turn to if things become tricky. And so again, is there maybe a gap for that support that's needed? And then importantly, how we balance the collective needs versus the individual needs in an ethical process, which again is no easy answer. And essentially what we came up with is that there is no one-size-fits-all approach. And the main thing is that we wanted to be able to give community members the opportunity to help shape whatever ethics process they were involved in. So this led on to a series of work we did with Open Collective in Shetland. I don't think they're called Open Collective, just Open in Shetland, working on a model for how we might want to think about almost a pre-engagement to ethics. So as we were sitting here thinking, well, if we're doing our own research, do we do, even for the survey that we're doing, do we send consent forms? Is consent forms actually the most appropriate thing? What if we turned it the other way around? What if it was the researchers who have to sign the consent form and the community who are kind of in the driving seat of the ethics process? Does that actually change the power dynamics quite a lot? What if there are other things that communities can have a bit more say on in terms of how they would like to engage in that research, whether it's as someone participating in the research as a sort of research subject, but most importantly, if they're also going to be leading on the research as well. So this developed a kind of series of questions and projects. I don't know if you wanted to come up at this point, Amy, to share a little bit about the thoughts, or you can do so from the floor, whichever. Maybe from here for the live stream, if that's okay. Thanks. Sorry, yeah, so I'm just introducing Amy, who has been on our ethics working group and was quite key in helping us develop some of the concepts around what we're calling a participatory ethics process, but also a term that Amy has been talking about as ethics from a rights-based perspective. So I'll just give you the mic.
Yes, I'm Amy. I'm a researcher at YouthLink Scotland, the National Agency for Youth Work. I also sit on the Third Sector Research Forum, as Laura mentioned, and that's a community really for third sector researchers, all those with an interest in third sector research. And I'm also matched with the Open in Shetland as well, and the researcher that's supporting them as well. So it's only briefly to say that, yes, we were coming at it from more of that kind of rights-based approach. It was part of that conversation that we were having, and the conversation that's kind of developed from the work that's done with the Third Sector Research Forum, where we developed a toolkit for third sector researchers to navigate ethics, because as Lauren was mentioning, there's lots of barriers when it comes to thinking about ethics, particularly when kind of partnering with universities, and there's not much support for people who are working in the third sector or for community groups when they're going through that process. So we wanted to come at it more from a rights-based approach. So thinking about it from a community member's perspective in terms of if you're involved or supporting, collaborating in research, how do you go about that process? How do you say, yes, I want to be involved in that, or yes, but how are we going to approach things like incentives to be part of it, things like consent, as Lauren mentioned, and also how do you have the right to say no? So really that's where this kind of approach was coming from, is kind of trying to think of it more from less than being like top down from from universities down to communities, and more about communities being empowered to kind of think about how they would like to be involved in research. So that was really the main thinking behind it.
Thank you so much, Amy. Absolutely worth a round of applause, because she didn't get much notice for that. So really, really grateful. So we went to Shetland and we developed what we're calling a participatory ethics toolkit. It's almost a kind of anti-toolkit, because really we're saying this isn't something that you have to do in a certain way each time, but it's more of a way to prompt asking questions about how people would like to be involved in research. So almost in this kind of meta way, asking people questions about how they'd like to be asked questions is kind of where we got to. So I don't know whether, I'll pass on to you maybe.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So very briefly, so the toolkit is being developed. We're going to spend a bit of time tomorrow as well looking at this toolkit, but we've been testing it with a few different partners up in Shetland, Open, Who Cares Shetland, and Ability Shetland as well, in a few different conversations. So the idea on the toolkit was thinking about, first off, this issue, we're not collecting data, but we're kind of making it a bit into a game. So it's framed very much at the very beginning of, if you could ask a research question, what would it be? And you could see one of the suggestions, can AI improve Peppa Pig? In which case the answer is obviously no, but let's go with it. And then we're going to test the bounds of what that is. And we had these little cards that people can go through, and the young people went through and were questioning each other on to kind of stretch, well, should people be paid for this type of thing? Should we be anonymous or not? So to give you a proper flavor of that, I'm going to very briefly invite Emma and Rhiannon to come up, who are from Open, and some of the young people, and to kind of maybe talk through two of the cards that kind of the questions that were interesting to you, particularly, and why it's important that you're discussing this. Does that sound all right? Yeah. Amazing. You're ready. Good to go. All right, so.
You might need the mic, yeah.
Here, you're going to give you the mic. And get out the.
So am I just talking about my...
Yeah, so which card did you pick, and why was it important to you?
I chose a card that says, how could people feel respected? Because I feel like people can show and, interpret respect in different ways. So, one thing that might be respectful for one person might be, disrespectful for another. Or you might do something which you think is going to show respect, but actually it doesn't. And it all depends on the person. So you just have to ask them, be like, how do you feel respected?
Amazing. Thank you, Emma. And Rhiannon, what was yours?
I chose a card that says, what could you do to make someone feel like they were an important part of the research? I quite like that because it's very, gets you thinking, how would you do that? And how, what?
That's okay. I remember in this discussion, there was a lot of talk about feeling appreciated and important wasn't just about money. It was sometimes about money, but it wasn't always. Does that resound? Yeah, that does. Amazing. Can we give him a massive round of applause, please? Thank you.
Yeah, huge thanks to Emma and Rhiannon as well. And I learned so much from working with these young people, and I actually wish, if I could design my own PhD program, it would be having these young people leading the doctoral training, because I have genuinely learned so much from working with them. So thanks very much for sharing your time as well.
Maybe just to round that off, so what we're going to do is, just to give this a bit of time, these are some of the questions that we've kind of framed. Now, if we weren't a little bit behind, we would give you a bit of time to talk this through in your groups. We actually put some, you may have noticed these beautiful artwork cards. Any of you who are nerds like me know that this is from a board game called Dixit. And so one of the tasks that we very often did, and actually we did with the young people, but we've done in many workshops, is to use these cards to think, well, what does ethics mean to you? And pick a card that speaks to you about it, and then explain why. So just to think about it, not just in terms of words, but thinking about it in terms of the visuals. Now, I think what I might suggest is we'll encourage you to think about that definitely this afternoon, and certainly in your groups, but these are the types of questions that we'll do the World Cafe on in the afternoon. So we're not skipping it, but we're just bringing it towards the end. So these are some of the ideas that we can just spark the conversation on, and then we'll go, and you'll get to dig deeper after the break in the afternoon as well. So, public health and social care, driving on.
Okay, so the second main working group we had was the Public Health and Social Care Working Group. And so again, we were starting with a series of questions of, well, what is public health and social care really? And what would we want it to look like? What needs to change? What do we want to have change? What do the communities and people we're working with want to see changed? And again, that point that we mentioned at the beginning with the different hats is really wanting to break down the binaries, not just between researchers and communities, but also practitioners and people with lived experience. So I guess practitioner and service provider can be used in different ways, but perhaps someone working as a professional within public health and social care, so someone in kind of healthcare. And how can we make that a kind of holistic system and experience for both the practitioners and for the people with lived experience? So, you know, what would make that change possible? If resources are finite, as we're aware right now living through austerity, what can we do to change what that structure is like and how people can engage more equitably in this space together? And then the last one's quite important, how to avoid consultation fatigue. So Lewis mentioned already that, you know, we know a lot of people can feel that research can sometimes be quite extractive. There's been a lot of kind of consultations across the sector that sometimes can feel as though they're not listening to the answers necessarily. So as we're doing our own work, and especially the co-priority survey that we have been developing ourselves, how can we avoid doing the same thing with our own network and avoiding making people feel that their data is being extracted or they're not being listened to? So these are some of the questions we had. One of the key members of the Public Health and Social working group was Heidi Tweedy from the Murray Wellbeing Hub. I don't know whether you wanted to come up and give a few reflections. I mean, even if it was... Do you want to sit down? Are you okay standing for now? Yeah?
Do you want me to hold it?
That's better, yeah, thank you very much. And not have the light in my eyes.
Yes,
We'll go this way,
absolutely.
this way,
We're
this
going
way.
to go this way. A little bit.
Yeah, so I've got my computer here because I just was looking at some of the notes that I'd made from it. And I guess being part of that space was really good, you know, from a third sector perspective. You know, from Murray Wellbeing Hub, we're a social movement and a social enterprise from that perspective and work really closely with health and social care in Murray and have talked to like kind of other national levels. But what was really great about working within that health and social care working group is it felt very, very mutual. So there was ourselves, there was people from
Public Health Scotland.
Alliance,
Yes, Alliance.
Health and Social Care Alliance, which was really great to have along. Caroline was there from Public Health Scotland, the Scottish Community Development Centre, they were there as well. And we also had GP represented as well, didn't we? And I think that's kind of the majority of the people that were there. I think what was really great is even though we were, you would think on paper we had very different perspectives of what was happening, actually mutuality was born very, very quickly, which allowed us to have conversations that were really beneficial, I think, to the Community Knowledge Matters group, really. I would say we talked about things like the fatigue that we've mentioned there, about how people can get really burnt out, because a lot of traditional health and social care is very much involvement, and it's very much like, oh, we're going to do another consultation, we're going to recommission a thing, let's go out to people. And it's something that we're particularly passionate about, and we're able to share some of our experiences from our local level. But it was great to hear other people's parts of the picture. And then Lauren was able to kind of take that and take it back within the rest of the system. I think that's enough.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you for holding.
Thank you, Heidi.
And yeah, Heidi is a Murray Wellbeing Hub champion, but also champion because, again, didn't have a huge amount of notice for that. So, well, hardly any at all. So thank you again, Heidi. And yeah, Heidi, again, is doing brilliant work with the Community Researcher Network. So do come and speak to her more about that. So as she said, we took some of the kind of reflective learning and the questions to help develop our own outputs. And so this is the second one, which you should have received a postcard. And we do have the lovely Louise Senior, who you'll be hearing from later as well. You are kind of our poster child. So we developed a working group to specifically create collaboratively a survey to think about rural mental health research. So mental health research that is happening in rural areas and how communities might like to see that happen more equitably. So we developed this working group with community members, many of whom are here today, also in collaboration with the University of the Highlands and Islands, who are co-hosting it with us. And Sarah Ann Munoz, who's also here, has been part of an international collaboration that this is also part of looking at rural mental health research across a number of different countries. So we've spent the last 6 months or so developing this survey with a number of community members. We have just launched it, and you have your postcards there. We also have a stack of other postcards at the back, so if you know somewhere that you might want to stick that postcard, or I can send you a slightly bigger poster, please do feel free to take them. We do want to get the word out. But I thought at this point I can welcome up Sarah Ann and Louise and Remy, if you're happy to come up to say a little bit more about it.
It's been great to be part of the working group around co-constructing the survey. I think we've managed to try and put into action some of the themes that we've heard about so far today. As you can see, we're talking about priorities around research, mental health and wellbeing, and what roles communities should have within that. I spent a lot of time, I think, doing some really good work around the language issue that we talked about so far, and also we spent quite a lot of time looking at the accessibility and developing the information sheet. And we've actually constructed, we were going to show you, but we'll give you the link, an animation, so everybody's not confronted with a huge ream of paper. If they want to take part in the survey, they can actually watch the animation, and I think it explains the purpose of the survey really well, so we'll make sure that we share that with you. I don't know, Louise or Remy, do you want to say anything else about your question?
That's all right. So I guess it'd be interesting to know what your kind of motivation was to get involved as a kind of peer researcher from a community perspective.
So previously I'd been working on the project in Orkney, which I'm going to be speaking about, but from this point of view I really wanted to have an input as a community member. I think the thing that really appealed to me more than anything was this idea of pushing the boundaries and restrictions and that kind of bureaucracy. That probably says more about my personality, and I'm like, yes, we can be a bit maverick with this. That was genuinely my overarching reason for doing it. But secondly, being involved, just addressing that language barrier, putting it into a language that people can actually understand what it is we're trying to do. So that was really kind of, I think, throughout all of this, was probably my push and my drive. I'm not going to lie, I feel a bit like total imposter syndrome, like I don't know that I'm doing anything useful, but absolutely it was great to kind of be part of that, just pushing the boundaries and just shaking things up a bit, which, like I say, probably says more about me causing disruption with these kind of things.
Disruption is definitely what we want, and yeah, someone who used to work in a university, that imposter syndrome is very much part of being a researcher, so a sign you're a true researcher. And yeah, so Remy, maybe is there something that you've kind of learned from this process, or a kind of highlight of the process so far?
I'm going to sound like a broken record. I think what is really important is to share with everyone, people in the community, people who are going to fill out this survey, is that we are all researchers in our own right. I think so most times research is so inaccessible to your average everyday person, and I think especially like from my kind of background, I think people are like, research, oh no, that's where you are being researched on, and I think we need to just change that narrative. And I think in terms of my input with this co-priority survey, is like just thinking about how we are really framing it and how we are selling this idea to people, and yeah, I suppose making sure that we are really listening to people. So yeah.
Can I say, excellent color coordination, guys. The little pink contingent, we planned this last night, didn't we? Yeah. Did you want to say anything else? Yeah, please, yeah.
So just to build up, I mean, your contributions have been really invaluable, I would say, absolutely. I've been looking every day at the answers to see how many people are completing and have people been able to fill out the survey, and I feel like we've got a higher response rate than we would normally expect from a purely academic survey, and people are filling out the entire thing, which is a really good sign that they understand the questions and that they feel it's meaningful to participate, so thanks for that. But we do still want more participants, so if there's anything you can do to spread the word, that would be great.
Thanks very much, all of you. It's just been such a highlight for me working with you all. So yeah, really excited to keep doing so. Thanks. Absolutely. And just another note on the accessibility with the survey, we've also got the introduction in Gaelic. We have an easy read version of the instructions for the survey and the video, as they mentioned as well. So hopefully something that will be easy for various different people to access and have a look at. Please do share it if you can. We'll make sure we've got all the details that you can share afterwards. And if you have a moment, we'd love to hear your views on this as well, because it's very much helping shape our own network plans as we go forward as well. All right.
So just to round off, and we want to give you a bit of a break before we go into the talks. We want to start the talks on time. But these are a little bit of a sense of the questions that we'll be coming into again after lunchtime. For the public health and social care, there will be a table set around this. So what does a whole system approach to public health and social care look like? What are we wanting to change? How can community knowledge be better listened to? So even if we fund all this amazing community-led research, if it's generated, how do we actually make sure it's actually affecting policy? And it's not valued less than academic research, and it has its proper place. And what is the importance and value of this community-led research? So yeah, just a bit of a primer, but we're going to give you a break, a well-deserved one, and we're just before you go, just to let you know what's going to happen. So we have our first parallel session again. We have supporting well-being on the Isles, from the North Isles to Orkney, of Orkney to Gear. That's going to be in this room, so you don't have to go anywhere, and this one is going to be live streamed. So for those of you watching online, thank you, and that will start. In the other room, we have exploring the intersections between well-being and climate action in the studio, and we have Molly, and we have Brody and Leslie who are going to be joining online as well with the tech gods support. So that's going to start, and then there's only a 5-minute turnaround between those, so then already pick your second one. So the second one, which starts at 12:50, so this will finish at 12:45, so there's 5 minutes to swap between perspectives on arts and well-being with carers in Murray and people living with dementia around the Western Isles, and that's again in this room. And then to be, or not to be, is youth-led research, moving from practice to policy, and that will be in the room over there. Okay, I'll leave this up. Enjoy a little bit of a break, and then we'll herald you into the rooms at 12. All right, thank you.